Welcome to Aware. We are dedicated to communicating information that inspires your positive growth and change. Are you interested in a peaceful planet? Are you interested in optimal health? Are you living with purpose? Are you enjoying your life? We realize each person can make a difference, and our mission is to empower your awareness. The choices that you make in every moment shape your life, and we encourage you to realize that you have your own answers and to always listen to your own truth. We invite you to stay aware. Hello and welcome to the Aware Show. I am Lisa Garr, and it's an honor to have you join me today because we get to have a conversation that applies to so many people. Most likely you listening, most likely someone you know, a friend, a family member, anyone who has ever struggled with depression, anxiety. It is in the news so much these days because we went through a global pandemic and we are living the effects of it without addressing it. The deep effects of it. We're trying to get back to normal. We're trying to get back to work, but this requires such a deep discussion on how to handle the stress, how to handle the change, the unprecedented constant crisis that we're in. And this is, again, I said, for you, for a friend, for a loved one, for a coworker, even a stranger that you meet can use your help and can use this information. And luckily, Dr. Gregory Jantz has dedicated his life to this. He is the founder of the center. It's called A Place for Hope. He has authored more than 37 books on this topic and has appeared as an expert on many different media outlets. And he is here to talk to us about deep, deep treatments for depression, anxiety, and so many different solutions around this very much needed topic. So thank you so much for joining me, Dr. Jantz.
Oh, super important topic, and you're very welcome because there is hope, first of all, but we are dealing with the highest numbers of anxiety and depression that we've ever seen. So that's significant. And anxiety has taken the number one spot as far as the most common diagnosis. So we look at that, that's above heart disease, that is above cancers. Anxiety is the number one diagnosis.
Wow. Now, if you could explain to me the difference between anxiety and depression, and are there many forms of anxiety? Can it be
Sure.
undetected? Yeah. Could we talk about that?
Yeah. Yeah. When you think about anxiety, well, you mentioned pandemic, last 2.5, 3 years, we've kind of had a period of where all of us have experienced anxiety. Maybe we still are walking through what appears to be some anxious times. And anytime there's unknowns about the future, it increases the sense of anxiety. It's all the what ifs. Now, worry is different than anxiety. Think about worry, it's that mental process. It's all those what ifs. What if I don't say the right thing? What if I didn't wear the right clothes? All the what ifs. But
Right.
if you keep recycling enough what ifs, you can create anxiety. Here's how you know if you have anxiety.
Okay.
Anxiety, I start to get physical symptoms. What's that look like? Maybe sweaty palms, my heart rate goes up, my digestion feels off. Anxiety, it may disrupt my sleep patterns. I may be laying there and have insomnia,
Or
worried
heart
about the next day.
palpitations, that type of
Heart,
anxiety.
uh,
Mm-hmm.
what we're seeing more and more of right now is an individual who will wake up in the middle of the night, wide awake, all of a sudden, their heart's pounding, they're kind of in one of those cold sweats, and they're gasping for air. Well, they're having a panic attack in their sleep. So we're seeing more of that. But if we look at anxiety kind of on a continuum, there's kind of mild, and then as it gets worse, the symptoms all get worse. And you may have depression with anxiety, that's true. But anxiety will paralyze the brain and it makes it hard to make a decision. Things that were easy before when you're anxious, it's like, man, I don't know, I can't make a decision. Anxiety creates self doubt. And we keep going on that continuum. Anxiety can put us in a very irrational place. Our thinking's off. We're not thinking in reality. People begin to think, it's so bad. be better off if I wasn't even around. And so you begin to entertain thoughts that you wouldn't normally have.
That was the other thing I was going to bring up is the rates of suicide have tripled.
Yes.
And this is a byproduct of that level of undetected, unaddressed anxiety.
It is, and we're seeing again. It's not necessarily encouraging to talk about, but related to this is the rates of suicide or suicide attempts, and we're seeing that drop to younger ages. We're seeing kids 12, 17. That's kind of a age range that we're really concerned about right now, because right now suicide is the leading or second leading cause of death in that age group of 12 to 17. Now
Oh my
that's hard to even say. That should be the last thing that would be taking a kid's life in those ages. But that's where things are right now.
It is a very difficult time. Let's talk a little bit about our youth, about that 13 or you said 12 to 16-year-old range where they were in online school and then back in school and all of the social pressures that happened as a result of
Yeah.
the online school. And
I can give you a general theme of what happened. Uh,
thank you. Hmm.
First of all, online learning for our youth and kids did not work. I mean, I
Oh,
just have to say it did not work. We had the highest rates of academic failure ever. What? Yeah, online didn't work. Yeah, we all know some kid that did okay and did well, but generally speaking, it was a
no.
great failure. We had more academic failure than ever before.
Hmm.
Kids online. Uh, I mean, I know of kids, and they've got their cell phone and they're pretending to be involved as a teacher, but they're texting or playing games online at the same time a class is going on. And it
Right.
wasn't fair to the teachers. My goodness. Uh,
And I heard a report today that the teachers are at the lowest, there's the lowest amount of teachers available now than ever, and the population of students has declined significantly since the pandemic. And it was declining prior, but it went so much steeper since then, and that's dangerous.
yes, it is, and somewhat related to this, we're finding in the state that I live, there's 500 and some applications for new schools. Those are parents, parent groups, people coming together. Go, man, I don't like what happened, and they're attempting to address these issues because their kids, their students, did not do well. That's
They want to
that's
start new
amazing.
schools.
They want to. I want to start something new. I'm not going to do this anymore. So we're
Oh,
seeing a lot of that, but we're also seeing the effects of the kids who've really gotten behind. Yeah, let's mix some social media into this. Kids and social media. So, number one source of information for a kid is social media. Then we got new terms like ghosting. You don't want to
right.
deal with somebody, you just ignore them, don't respond back. Um, and so we have a generation of kids who don't really know how to solve problems. I guess if I don't like you anymore, I just don't respond to you. I ghost you. In
Hmm.
fact, this has been such a problem that I'm actually right now engaged in writing a book on the topic of ghosting because adults are doing it too.
So it's just I don't want to deal with you anymore, or I don't know how to deal with you anymore. And
Exactly. I don't know how, but the easiest is forget it. I'm going to ignore you. So
well,
let's
I
say you,
think
yeah,
I mean it's about tools. It's about tools to confront people in a manner that isn't dangerous or harmful. We need more tools like that. I think that's a great idea for a book.
well, I'm
Mhm.
just noticing. I had somebody, one of my publishers, who said, I was so devastated by ghosting. I thought I was in a good relationship, and all of a sudden, no response back.
Wow.
And so, but this can add anxiety. Talk about anxiety and depression. My goodness. You wonder because it creates self doubt. What did I do wrong? What's wrong with me? And you become anxious. And so the theme that happens is we begin to isolate. We
Uh,
pull away from people. And a lot of folks did that during pandemic days. And depending on who you talk to, no, the pandemic's still going. No, it's not. Nobody knows what to believe. So there's a lot of distrust. People don't know. Well, so the distrust that's out there adds to the anxiety. So we really do have a very anxious culture. And with that, people become very irritated and angry. Um, in 37 of our larger cities, road rage is way up. What?
Yes.
Road
I've heard
rage.
this as well. Yes, these are all of the results of this not being addressed. And
Yes.
it needs to be addressed for years because it's not going away. The shock that we experience, I mean, never before has the world shut down.
Right.
And those that were naturally introverted took advantage of it and stayed inside.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
was listening to a broadcaster this morning saying he really hasn't left his house since the pandemic and he's fine with it. And
Yeah.
and he doesn't like or deal with people well now because of that. So going to the market is tough for him because he's not used to that. And that is very true for a lot of people that were already introverted. It forced them to go inside even more and stay there.
Absolutely.
Not
And one of
change.
the things that happened is I isolate more, and it doesn't necessarily take care of my anxiety. I may even grow more anxious, but I may also, and this is the third issue we must address, addiction. Addiction rates skyrocketed. By
Mhm.
addiction, alcohol. We made, there was a 7 week period that we made the record alcohol sales, selling about $1 billion worth of alcohol. How do you do that? I mean, that's a lot of money. But people were turning, so they're anxious. I'm tired of feeling this way, and I'm working from home now. Well, I'll just start drinking. So
Yep.
we had a
Yep.
lot of IT and technology folks who just, hey, 4 o'clock I start drinking, but then 3 months pass. Now I'm drinking at 1 o'clock while I'm working.
Yep.
So
Because
so
it is so
addiction rates have
addictive.
gone
Yeah.
up. Now
Yeah.
we
And
always tell ourselves, I'll stop doing that when this is all over. But but most don't. They just continue what they started.
And plus, when you were in an office before, you weren't drinking at your desk. There was a clear delineation between
Yeah.
ending the office and maybe you had a drive home or you went to the
Yeah.
gym or something and you didn't go out every single night. Now it's just a seamless walk from the desk to the kitchen, and it's
Yes.
it's way too easy. And there's a lot that has to be said for setting up structures differently, and working from home has great benefits. It's wonderful, but it also turns your house into your office. And you got to have boundaries. And yeah, it's
Yep.
something that we get to talk about today because I was just thinking about that this morning, um, of how great it is to be able to work from home and be able to do things from home and still hang out with your pets and exercise and spend time with family. And it's your office. It's,
Right.
you
Well,
know,
and there's no transition time between work and home or work and play, and there's no physical space transition, and so
no.
those boundaries get quite clouded. So that
So you work all
honestly, I believe
day.
that, yeah,
Yep.
contributes to
Work all day and
anxiety.
then you have a glass of wine and you come back and you work all night and then you look back at what you sent and it was probably a mess. Yeah, so let's talk about some ways to set these boundaries so that you can be healthy and how this relates to anxiety and depression. Also, we really haven't touched on depression yet.
Right. Well, and by the way, I can be depressed and anxious, or I can just be plain anxious and I can just have a lot of depression. But a lot of times there is overlap. Now, depression, I look at that on the continuum as well. There's a mild depression. It feels like you got a cold, and some time passes. You go, hey, wait, I feel normal now. And it was just a natural way of it went away. And that's not uncommon. The depression that we oftentimes hear the word clinical depression is something that doesn't lift. It doesn't go away. And maybe it's been 6 months, it's been a year, and you go, wow, what is going on? And it does feel like a lot of times we'll describe it just feels like a heaviness I can't get off me. And I don't feel good about myself. My self-esteem doesn't feel good. I don't feel like doing anything. And so it has some of the same dangers as anxiety. And some of the things that I do to cope with depression can create anxiety. Um, but it's that sense that doesn't go away. It's you feel like apathy. I don't have the energy to care about. Maybe you used to care about self-care or and exercise or taking care of yourself, and it's like I don't even have the energy to do that anymore. That's depression.
And did you notice that there was an uptick in prescriptions for antidepressants during the
Oh
pandemic?
yes, yes. So I'm at a facility called the Center, a Place of Hope, and we noticed that anxiety medications as well as antidepressant, everybody was wanting, just give me the pill to feel better. Okay. And I get that. Okay. Enough's
Right.
enough. Just give me the pill so I can feel better. We even had a period of time where amazingly there was a supply chain issue with a very popular anti-anxiety medication. There were so
Re-
many prescriptions being written by general practitioners as well that it was hard to get that particular medication. Well, that tells us something.
Absolutely. So that was for anxiety.
Yeah.
And what about depression? That is, I didn't even realize that. That's very interesting. I can understand.
Yeah.
Is but is there a difference though between circumstantial anxiety and circumstantial depression as a result of maybe the pandemic and the fears that was,
Yeah.
that very prevalent, and then now is there a difference where there isn't maybe the shutdowns, the lockdowns, the hospital numbers, the ticker on the television with the death rates, all of that fed into it with that
Yes.
level of fear and anxiety? Is there a difference now? Has it declined at all?
Well, um, anxiety has increased. What we do know is the situation that our culture or world that we're in right now, there the unknowns have increased. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, what's the next virus? Monkeypox. What's the next thing? So there's always been something that's next, or you wake up in the morning and go, what bad thing just happened again in the news? So
Right.
we call that anticipatory anxiety. I'm expecting the next bad thing. And sure enough, there's something. And so we're living with a chronic state of anxiety. It's like it's just kind of been there. Well, our bodies, not only emotionally, but our bodies physically, our physiology is not designed to live in that hyper vigilant state nonstop. And so this is where we're finding people complaining, I got headaches, my digestion is off, I don't feel good, I don't sleep good. So I used to work in sleep research, and I can tell you that sleep, the quality of our sleep, and our mental health is closely tied together. And so if I'm using alcohol, I'm just using that as an example, but if I'm using alcohol to cope with anxiety, well, over time, that's a depressant. And I may find that my sleep doesn't feel restful. And so I'm starting to do things that actually are hurting my well-being.
That is fascinating research, the sleep research and its link to the anxiety. In Do you find that during sleep patterns that the anxiety will wake people up and keep them up and it causes an enormous amount of insomnia in the middle of the night?
Yes, and I think a person wakes up with that in that alarmed state and they feel wide awake, but it's 2 in the morning and you're going, what happened? And you feel like I can't get back to sleep. And
Right.
so there's a sense some will use the word I'm being tortured. I can't sleep, but I'm exhausted. So yes, um, and if we look at those who specialize in sleep disorders, they're telling us they've never been so busy treating
Mm.
sleep disorders.
Goodness. Well, we've really stated the case here for all of these to be a big problem. I mean, we've really
Yes.
talked about it, about anxiety and depression and addiction, and all of this is just piling up in us. How do you safely manage this amount of chronic stress? How do you
Yeah.
know when enough is enough? How do you get to this point where you actually know you need help?
And that's really what we need to all look at. Um, and I actually spent some time and created a anxiety test to help a person determine, okay, where's the red zone? When do I need to be sure I am getting some assistance? Because you can get used. In fact, I had somebody recently say, well, this is just the way I am. I've been this way for now for quite some time. I'm used to the anxiety. Okay, it's like it's normal, but it's not. There reaches a point where you've got to know, okay, when do I ask for help? And that's a free anxiety test that will uh, tell you later how to do that. It's totally private, but I felt that we needed to get um, some information out there so people could understand what are all my symptoms and at what point do I need to ask for help. I don't want to go over the edge. So but we're not designed to live at this level of chronic anxiety and stress. We're seeing more friction. I mentioned road rage, anger levels, because people feel like, man, things are not changing. I don't feel good. And we can just add up. It's easy to add up all the negatives and make that our point of focus, you know. And but
Yes.
really what we have to do, despite what's going on around me, I have to make some decisions. And one of
Okay.
those is I've got to get back to what is healthy and good self-care. I've got to do some fundamentals because when I'm anxious or depressed, people tend to drink less water, by the way. It's how
Hmm.
fascinating is that? They stop drinking water and maybe I just talked to a guy. He said, I think I'm averaging about 12 cups of coffee a day. Well, 12
Yes.
cups of coffee. I go, do you drink anything else? He goes, nah, that's kind of all I drink is coffee. Well,
Yeah.
12 cups of coffee a day for months and months and months, even for a couple days, is probably not going to help your anxiety, right?
Uh,
So,
yes.
but we forget some of the things we're doing, we're self sabotaging, but it's our way of coping. So
it,
I always say,
it
okay, let's go
is.
back.
Sorry,
Yeah,
it is a coping mechanism because if you sit at this desk for 8 to 10 hours a day, you're just going to constantly reach for coffee. And
yeah,
we've slipped into this. We haven't done this by choice. It's just happened. Yeah.
right.
I.
So,
Hmm.
well, maybe we need to have some baby steps and some small goals. Maybe I need to start drinking my water again. Maybe I need to get that big liter bottle and say by midday every day I'm going to make sure I drink my water early on. By the way, water improves concentration. Water actually improves mood. Water helps us when we're dehydrated. It's hard to make decisions. So there's a lot of emotional benefits to water.
I had
But
no idea. That is great.
water
Really,
lowers
water
blood
helps our
pressure.
mood.
Yeah. Oh yeah, water has a lot to do with mood and energy. So get your water. Go, okay, I'll do this. I'll give it a 30-day try. Great. Let's
My
just say
water.
next 30 days, there's your water. I'm going to
Yeah.
really work on my water and I'm going to get rolling with that. Well, what else is going in your mouth? Hmm. Uh, am I getting adequate source of protein in the morning? Am I fueling my brain? Or am I just kind of grazing at my computer all day and eating all day, and it's not necessarily healthy. So we've got to come back to making some of those decisions. Will you instantly feel better? Maybe not instantly, but I know if you do this good month, you're going to be encouraged and go, I'm going to keep this up. Uh, Another simple one is exercise levels did drop. Okay. And maybe exercise feels like the word diet. Maybe it's not a positive word to you. But what if you said, well, I'm going to go out something as simple as I'm going to do 20-minute walks a day or do something to get, and I'm going to put that on my schedule and I'm going to really do it. Uh,
Yes.
but get the movement going again. when we're anxious, we tend to be more paralyzed. When we're depressed, we don't feel like I don't have the energy to do anything. But we got to get the movement going again.
That is important. One of the things that saved me was like a Fitbit, just to get a little thing that buzzes
Yeah.
me and says, it's time to move. And I'm like, it is? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I'll go meeting to meeting to
Exactly.
interview to meeting and not move for 3, 4 hours. And even though I exercise in the
Right.
morning, that's it. And
Yeah.
then the rest of my day is sitting here, and it does just wind up happening that way, and the calendar gets frozen, not frozen. Your thing is freezing. Your Zoom
Yeah.
is freezing, so we need to get that fixed. Sorry.
And yeah. And what about here's the sleep. Um, and what am I doing in my pre-sleep routine? Am I glued to a screen right up till bedtime? For example, I know how tempting it is, but maybe I need to back off an hour before bedtime, work on getting away from anything with a screen, start a healthier transition to sleep. But
Okay,
we've got to get back to addressing the sleep issues.
so we've talked about water, we've talked about sleep and screen time. We've talked about giving yourself plenty of exercise and then exercise breaks during the day. Um, what are some other suggestions that you have that not only can help, these are things that can help with anxiety
Yeah.
and depression, right? What are some other
Yes.
really, really good tips?
Well, I also want to look and say, okay, what potentially is going on in just your body physiology? Have you had your blood work done in a while, in the last 6 months? Have your vitamin D levels checked? For example, vitamin D has a lot to do with depression and mood. And we know when folks come to us, just as a matter of routine, we're doing blood work. We want to know, well, what is going on? So let's get a baseline to work with. If I'm really deficient in uh, the vitamin D, I may have really low energy and feel very sluggish. So there's some simple things that can be checked that are important. Even hormonal levels, a lot to do with just mood and energy there. But if you haven't had some things checked out, do that. Find out where you are, get that baseline, so we can start to improve those things.
So
We
far,
also
I'm
know,
no, go ahead.
yeah,
I want to hear because I have my vitamins in front of my desk. I'm doing good
yeah.
here. I've got my vitamins, I've got my water, and I got my coffee.
Oh, there you go. You're all set. You're gonna drink more water. You'll drink more water than coffee, and so
Got my Fitbit.
yes, yep,
See, the
that's
thing
great.
is that you can have all these things, but you actually have to take the vitamin, you have to drink the water, you have to walk when the Fitbit says to walk, and slow down on the coffee or not.
Yeah.
Okay, you were going to mention something else, like how do you
Well,
avoid those impulses of really going after those snacks and that carbohydrates because the brain burns carbs, right? It needs the carb. It thinks it needs the carbs. How do you
yeah.
control that impulse?
Well, one of the things I do need to look at is what is we call it the blood sugar levels. And my blood sugar levels dropping, and I feel like I want that candy bar or whatever. So make sure that I am getting adequate protein so that I feel good. I can think better. I'm not craving maybe sugar or sweet things. So that's a big one is protein levels, and that's where I don't mind if you have a good healthy protein drink, but do something so that you don't hit that low blood sugar where you go, okay, I'm just going to eat whatever's in front of me, and sometimes it's just not good. So that's important.
Yes.
We also know that, and I know these sound really simple. But over the last 2.5 years, we've just kind of forgotten to do some of these things.
Right.
So we got to get back to the healthy habits, right?
Yes. Yes.
Um, I think too, let's look at our relationships. It's time to, am I just totally with people who are drainers and they're so into everything negative right now that just pull me down? Who do you have in your life that is positive? They speak positive things into your life. They're an encourager. They're going to tell you the truth, but they're not constantly doom scrolling. we get into this thing with our devices and we just keep going doom scrolling because guess what? It's mostly negative and we just keep looking for more negative. So,
What is that? Like a dopamine hit for the brain? Does it really need and addicted to the fear? I mean,
well,
it's
we
a real
do.
thing.
We get used to it. So I start looking for more fear. And you mentioned a very important brain chemical, dopamine. And dopamine is that feel good chemical. It comes from our exercise. It comes from actually ultimately good nutrition. So those are some things to look at. Also, I want to mention just generally B vitamins. B vitamins are so important to our body, our nervous system, that we manufacture most of our B vitamins in our gut and that healthy bacteria. And let's just say your digestion, your system hasn't been good for a while, and you've been doing some things that have not been good to your digestion. Well, um, there's times where good supplementation can really make a difference. And B vitamins are something that needs to be looked at along with that vitamin D to help. We call the gut the second brain. Our
Mm.
gut is connected to our brain through something called the vagus nerve. It's like a two-way highway. Our serotonin, some of our very important chemicals, are made in the gut. So let's remember gut health during times of stress is really important. This is where the probiotics, all that gets factored in.
I think one of the well, a couple questions for you. What happens when you have someone who is that doomsayer in your life that constantly goes after the negativity? Yeah, it's draining. And I wind up not talking to those people barely at all, but they're relatives.
Yes, and I have a relative that I think is, well, we can kind of joke about it now, but has been so addicted to negative news, and she started having panic attacks.
Mm.
And at one night called 911 during a panic attack, thinking she's going to die. And that's what a panic attack feels like. Uh, she spoke with a physician and asked what she was doing. She's older. She spends most of the time at home in front of the television, and that's what she does all day. And so the doctor said, you just need to turn that off, find something else to do. And she did a lot better. Well, here just a couple nights ago, she had another panic attack and called 911 again, ended up in the emergency room. And so we asked the question, did you turn the TV back on?
Mm.
She said, yeah, I did. So we need to remember sometimes we can be very sensitive to an overload of negative information and we start looking for more and more. Let's just be aware of that. And let's also balance by having those healthy relationships by also putting some good things in we've got to renew our thinking. And
Hmm.
so when I say doom scrolling, have good guardrails that you're not going to just go off the edge
Right.
of all the negative.
It's, in a way, it's better to get the headlines on your phone because then you can choose whether or not you want to look at them
Sure.
and you can see if there's something that's happened. But when there's a headline that comes through that says mass shooting, I mean, you're going to click on it and find out what happened in the world. And if it's close to your neighborhood, I mean, this is the state of the world that we live in. And
Yeah.
so, how do you stay calm in this state of constant pandemonium? And especially if you're around people that tend to be angry and you choose not to be.
Well, yes. If I'm around people that are constantly angry, and by the way, maybe the things they're angry about are justified, but that anger is kind of repoisoning us, and it's not a healthy solution either, because we tend to do things out of anger that we later regret. Uh, if it enters into rage and it's road rage, people do things I can tell you, they always regret it. It never, the road rage does not have a positive outcome.
Right.
So, and people will regret what they did. So watch for that. Watch for behaviors that you're kind of going to regret. Now, I believe if I'm practicing good self-care and I'm working on really renewing my thinking, so that means I'm limiting just how much news and information and social media, you're going to feel better. Oh, you will feel better if you can if and when you do limit it. Give it a little bit of time. I, you know, for the longest time during all the pandemic, I was just like everybody else, man. I was digging into it. I had the television on at night. I go, you know what? This this is so distracting, and it's distracting to my family members. This is not good. Uh, and we made a decision, and we're doing a whole lot better because it's off. we're
Ah,
we're spending time with one another, and then we really reactivated an old rule we had. When you're at the dinner table or at the table, um, keep the device away and really engage, make eye contact, be present, even if it's your family. Come on, be there for one another. If there's something so important you want to show me on your phone, well, at least ask permission, but let's control that. Don't be texting, you know. A few years ago, I knew we were in trouble when our two kids who were older were texting each other at the dinner table. I go, okay, we have to change this.
well, it's we used to replace it with a an exercise, and we used to
Yeah,
do this thorn, the rose, the thorn, or the rose, the thorn, the rose. So it's rose, something that's good, and then a thorn, something that was challenging, then another rose that gives a
yeah,
compliment of something that was good. So we would sit down and do that and talk about what we're grateful for, and it completely changes the trajectory of your evening. It gets you off of social media and talks about, then you can set
yes,
goals. I mean, you could do all that over dinner. We used to do that a lot. It was fun, but then our daughter went to college.
yeah. Well, and
But
you're
we
right,
still do
and
it.
yeah, and it's so important to remember. You mentioned gratitude. Gratitude. We need a little more of that. Gratitude promotes optimism, and optimism gives us hope for the future. And so we know that people who are more grateful, we love to be around them. They're kind of like a magnet. Grateful people generally will say they have close relationships. And so, how do I foster gratitude? A very quick personal example. My wife went through about a 2-year period of some chemotherapy and cancer treatment. And one of the things that she started doing early on, every morning, I mean, she was faithful to this. She'd have some quiet time, but she would sit in the same chair and she started a gratitude journal.
Mm,
And she would, I, I mean, always be writing something. Now I'm thinking, how can you've lost all your hair, you're so sick, and you're writing a gratitude journal? How are you
unbelievable.
doing
Mm,
that? And so she kept that up. Of course, now it's been a number of years, and it wasn't that long ago because now there's been multiple journals. I said, I mean, how many gratitudes have you written, or what are you up to? Because she always writes 3 to 5 things a day. And it was at that time, it was 20,000 something. 20,000 gratitudes.
wow.
And I'm going, how do you even think of those things? Well, one
Yes,
gratitude leads to the next. But here's
it
what
does.
she said, and this is the power of gratitude. She said, I think it was one of the things that kept me alive.
Mm,
So the power of gratitude and the fostering of optimism and hope. Now, that caused me to I dug in. Well, is there studies on gratitude? Is there research? Because gratitude is a fascinating one to look at. And there has actually been studies done about gratitude and optimism. And we know that gratitude over time can actually influence and alter brain chemistry. Gratitude and alter those levels of, you mentioned dopamine. So gratitude does have a powerful effect. We got to
it's a
get back
thing.
to having some gratitude.
It is a real thing. It really is. And there's nothing like a life-threatening illness or accident to really force you into that moment of gratitude. And I mean, I've spoken to someone who has a prayer list of 107 people, and he prays
Yeah.
for these same 107 people every single
Wow.
night. I
Yeah.
know. It's just such a
Well,
beautiful thing.
that's
It's like,
that's
oh,
an
yeah.
amazing, powerful routine.
Yes, right. And I recently, in this last year, I took up yoga, and I use some of the entire yoga class because yoga is a practice. But
Uh-huh.
if I focus the entire class on gratitude, I'm turning the act of gratitude into a physical thing.
There you go.
And that really has helped me. I've done a lot of praying for my brother and a
Yes.
lot of praying for people, and just really taking that time to intentionally put that focused energy that yoga does with energy, and it moves energy,
Hmm.
to turn that into a focused practice of gratitude. So if you take any way you can put it into your life as a practice, like your wife with the journal, or
Yes.
this man with the 107 people, or
Yeah.
turn one of your exercise classes into a gratitude class. Turn it into a physical thing, because gratitude is energy as much
Yes.
as anything is energy. hmm
Yeah.
you can really
Yep.
work with it. It's not just one of those things that you just kind of go, oh, I'm so grateful for. No, no, no. I'm advocating to turn it into an intentional energetic practice. So
That's right.
anyway, it also helps. So, can you address stress levels where they're just
Yes.
like constantly pegged?
Yeah. Stress levels in our body, our adrenal glands begin to not produce adrenaline, but cortisol. Cortisol is a chemical we need, but it ends up too much cortisol in our bodies is detrimental, and it's because we're overstressed, and so we begin to secrete way too much chemical called or cortisol, and then our heart rate is affected, heart health is affected. So it really is true that chronic stress can set us up for a disease process. Okay. And I'm not saying if you have chronic stress, you're going to get a disease, but you don't want to stay in that mode because of what it does to our body and our immune system. And chronic stress, oh, well, talk about depression. It's going to physiologically depress your body. Your body will be anxious. And so this is why I love the whole person approach. We started the Center of Place of Hope early 80s, actually. This is our
Wow.
38th year, and we believe in addressing the whole person. Now we're a facility where people come and stay. They're with us for a while, but we believe doing it with a team and doing it a little differently. So my bias is I want to know, okay, is this anxiety, depression? Is it situational? Are there things within my body that are going on medically? What could be going on? Or has there been trauma in my life that I need to work on resolving some trauma, some relationships? So that's what we want to cover all the bases.
I'm curious about you, Dr. Jantz. How did you get into this, or involved in starting such a center? That's a really brilliant idea, to have a holistic center for depression and anxiety.
Well, when
Great
I
idea.
first got it, yeah. So, we use natural health care. We use, we like to more of a natural approach when we can, but we use medications as well. We use so full spectrum of medical counseling. We have everybody gets a fitness assessment. We want to get you out, get you moving. So we're going to cover all those bases. Well, my first work out of college was it was at a prison, and there in the prison, it was a women's prison, and there was a lot of, at that time, eating disorders, anorexia and bulimia. And I saw that really at that time, the medical literature described eating disorders cunning and baffling. In other words, we didn't have very many good answers for it. And that was really what began my quest for, well, how do you help? What are we missing here? And so we actually had a vision for creating a center where we could do more of the whole person care. And there was a lot of different reasons why a person had an eating disorder. And a single approach for everybody just did not work. And so that was my quest, if you will. And it was 38 years ago that we founded the center. And I am probably I'm probably more passionate about what we're doing now than ever before because I see lives change. I
Mm.
really do see things work.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been good advancements in the treatment of depression and treatment of anxiety. And, we can do pretty extensive workups and brain chemistry and
Wow.
really get down to what's going on and are there nutrient deficiencies? Emotionally, what do we need to address? So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of our bias, if you will, of how we believe. It's not a single approach. We need to look at and cover all the bases.
And where is this located? And it's an outpatient or inpatient center?
So we're a place where people stay. So a facility where a person comes and stays 4 weeks, 6 weeks. Usually it's an average around 4 weeks. And then we work with people when they leave and they become a part of our alumni program. Uh,
Nice.
so we work with folks from all over the country and even internationally. So
And do
we're
they come to
blessed.
you, or it's not a
Yeah,
remote
no,
type of situation? Yeah.
they're coming here first for the, if you will, the in-person care.
Hmm. Right. But it does take that to have a supportive environment. So when people leave there, you give them the tools to manage the life that they have to go back to, right?
Well, we help them put together a great continuation of care or aftercare plan, as well as they're able to connect with our alumni program, and we have our treatment team that does things online that they can participate in. So, you know, getting home after having a great intense experience, that transition time, that first 3 months, first 6 months, kind of get you past that year mark is really important.
Hmm. Right. Because it takes choices
Mhm.
and, choices to change or to change the environment that you're in or whatever that is involved.
That's
And
right.
yeah. And so, in the center that you have, is it definitely just anxiety and depression, or is it kind of all involved? I mean, is it
Well,
all
it
together? I
just
mean, your recent book is on the anxiety reset, but are anxiety and depression and eating disorders all connected?
but ultimately they are all
Mm.
connected. Now we deal a lot with chronic stress. We deal a lot with people who have had addictive issues and they need to move through that. So, but the anxiety and depression are the most common issues that are presented. Now, a lot of reasons for that. So we see a lot of folks where there's been significant trauma or repeated trauma or abuse in their life and where they need that addressed. So
Right. Right.
we just want to be comprehensive.
Yes, yes. We touched on this just a little bit, but you talked about impulse control and that how to break that pattern, or I don't know if it's changing the perspective to reach for that carbohydrate or reach for that alcohol or that angry text or that just need to be a doomsday person. How do you
Yeah.
break that impulse? Because it's a chemical reaction, isn't it?
Oh, yes. Breaking an impulse and what we call impulse control, be able to manage and really modulate some of that instant behavior that you've had. Some people, they're on automatic pilot. I received some negative news. I just start eating. It's like you're so used to doing that, you're not even thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and when we're under a lot of stress or anxiety, this part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, where we're supposed to make our executive decisions, our good decisions, we bypass that. And so, one of the first things we have to develop is a sense of how to put things on pause for a minute. I want to not be reactive. I and so, but we're used to being reactive. Can you retrain yourself? Yeah. Will it take a month or longer? Yeah, yeah. But you're going to make progress, and you're going to notice, hey, wait a minute. I just received some really tough news. I don't feel that great, but I'm not doing anything self-destructive.
No, what are you
So
saying? To actually imagine a pause button and just pause?
I think you could do that. I think too, you begin to train yourself is I don't want to do anything that is self-destructive or that I'm going to later have regret. And so
But
I need to
how? How
start
do
to,
you do that?
well, some of it's just in our thinking process. Some of it is understanding why do I do this? So, oh, I get it. When I was traumatized as a kid, I started turning to food early on. And so that's what I've been doing. Understanding how I got that pattern going is not always necessary, but can be really helpful as I begin to change and go, this is not working for me anymore. I'm going to really work on changing some patterns. But I have to be aware, is it anger? Is there a lot of anger inside me? Is there a lot of guilt or shame inside me that's propelling this? Is there a lot of fear? So always look for those three deadly emotions potentially. Anger, another word could be hurt, fear, anxiety, guilt, shame. Watch those. Those can be behind a lot of the instant behaviors you want to move into.
So look underneath the
Yeah.
compulsion of the food or the anger or the
Yeah.
reaction and say, all right, what's causing this? And then could you go a step beyond that and actually change your state, to change your environment or change your situation, just even if it's slightly?
Yes. And sometimes I need to actually change. You said it well, change my environment. If I may need to get out of the room and go outside and just do a transitional behavior and do that 10, 20-minute walk. I need to change my environment. So often we
Call a
don't.
friend, do something, but yes.
break, change the environment. Go for that walk and make that phone call. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of injustices in the world these days that aren't getting solved, and there,
Yeah.
a lot of problems that aren't being addressed because there are no solutions to them. So, yes, you could use your voice, but snapping isn't really going to get you anywhere, is it?
No. And I always ask, will I later regret this behavior? Well, if I do, am I going to really regret this? Because regret is going to fuel anxiety. Regret is going to fuel that sense of shame or embarrassment. Regret's going to add another layer of depression. So every day, what's my healthy choice? Every day. And that's with relationships.
Well,
Um, and
it could also be a healthy tool to be able to use your voice so that you
yes,
feel freer,
yep,
but not at the expense of other people's emotions.
that's right. That's right. Exactly.
Yeah,
Well
I
said.
know some people like that just get it off their chest so that they feel better, but it's really all about them. And they
Right.
just leave, a wake of bodies in their past. And yeah, there's got to be some consideration for how other people feel as a result of you feeling better.
Yes,
But
that's right.
it's a fine line. Using your voice is very important, and
Yes, it
feeling
is.
heard and feeling like you've expressed yourself. There's such a fine line there. Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Well, these
Yep.
things and many, many more things, I'm sure you cover it in your in the center and also through your book, and the book that I know you've written many, but the one right now that we're talking about is the Anxiety
Yeah.
Reset. And the center, where did you say that it's located? A place for hope, a place of
Um,
hope.
a place of hope. And if you'll go to a place of hope, there's two pretty extensive tests or questionnaires. One's on depression, one's on anxiety. Now, honestly, they're totally private. You take it, and then we're going to give you. Um, there's free downloads of one of them's a book, but we're going to give you some things that can help you at least get started on some things. And then it's up to you if you want to ask for more help.
That's fantastic. And what is the website? I know we've
A
had it,
place
A Place of
of
Hope.
hope.com.
Okay. We've had it on your lower third the whole time. So
All right.
aplaceofhope.com. And that will direct you towards tools and so forth. And in terms of
Yes.
the location, is it various locations?
So our location is in a beautiful little community on the waterfront in Edmonds, Washington.
Washington, wonderful. That's fantastic. Just a quick question. Are there places in the country that are more that have higher rates of depression and anxiety than others?
Well, I used to say there are, but now it's everywhere.
Hmm.
And but we do know, obviously, there are higher rates of anxiety and depression in more populated areas. Interesting.
Hmm.
Uh,
Okay.
so one side of our state is smaller communities and farming and so forth, and those folks don't understand what's going on in the city. See, and
Right, right,
so they're
right.
not they're. But I'm making a general statement. They're not experiencing at the same level what others may be experiencing. So, yeah, I guess it does matter a little bit where you live.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your information. This has been great. There's a lot of resources at aplaceofhope.com as well, which is really great for you to get some tools on how to deal with the chronic stress that exists in our world today, but the choice to stay calm under this specific stress load, because that's a tool that is going to take some practice and it's going to take developing. So I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
Really good to be with you today. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And if you liked something that you heard on the show today, please go to our podcast. You can listen on demand at any time at the Aware Show podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. And you can share it with a friend and definitely leave a comment if you found something interesting that helped you in the show. I love to hear from you. I'm Lisa Garr, and until next time, I invite you to stay aware.